Hi, I'm Jill. I'm married to Dan. I have two adult kids, Joseph, who's 25, and Aaron, who's 21. Recently, I was reaching for an irrigation hose on the ground, and I heard a very soft, indistinct rattle. It sounded a little like the air that escapes from a water hose when you inadvertently step on it. I froze. I checked my feet. No hose. The noise had stopped, and I briefly considered finishing my task. It was the last job of the day, and I was in a hurry to finish. For reasons I don't fully understand, I glanced between some blue barrels and saw the body of a snake inches from where I had reached in. Calling for help, I reached Chris and his daughter Michaela, who arrived with their snake catcher. I got a second look at the big monster. It had 8 buttons and was very fat. I thought about that snake the whole next day. I carried a hoe as I walked through the garden, and not just to snag a wayward weed. I watched where I stepped. I was not the same carefree, or maybe I should say careless, person I was the day before. I thanked God for sparing me. Clearly, he had shown kindness, protection, and mercy. But a thought kept bouncing around in my brain. That little rattle was an extremely subtle warning. In comparison, last year, I was watching TV with the door open, and over the noise of the show and a very large fan, I heard a rattle close to my doorstep. Smokes, the feral cat that we had befriended, was staring down a rattlesnake. Its warning was loud, continuous, and unmistakable. What was God trying to teach me? As our friend, he is always trying to show us something about himself. God often tests our heart and our resolve so we can learn and grow, to see who we really are, and contrast that with what we might become. God's words, his warnings, his convictions, are sometimes loud and sometimes quiet. In 1 Kings 19, Elijah recognized the voice of God. It was not in the wind, or an earthquake, or the fire, all loud and unmistakable, but the Bible describes it as the still small voice of God. So what does the Bible say about knowing God? It'll help me to better recognize him in the future. Micah 7:7 says, "Therefore I will look unto the Lord. I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me." That verse has 3 parts, and each part says something important. Number 1, therefore I will look unto the Lord. Do we look for God in the everyday things of our lives? How many times has he done great things for us, but because we weren't looking, we missed it? Number 2, I will wait for the God of my salvation. How important is it that we find God? Are we waiting and earnestly seeking him? Or like me, do you sometimes get restless and in a hurry or distracted? Number 3, my God will hear me. This is the part of the verse that I repeat to myself most often because it gives me peace. We all want to be heard, but to know that the God of creation, our Father, hears us is profound. I want to hear from God, but I find it reassuring beyond words that he clearly says, he hears me. I thank God for sparing me the pain and the danger of a snake bite, but I thank him even more that he is my friend. I don't really know why his voice is loud sometimes and soft others, but I know he is present, he loves and protects us, and wants to be known. Today I want to encourage you to have confidence in God, to look for him, to wait for him, to know he hears you, and to give thanks when he reveals himself. The one who calls you is faithful, and he also will do it. 1 Thessalonians 5:24.
So Jill, you're from Chicago, huh?
Yes.
You know what? I love the fact of your influence on the kids. You don't know it, but your way of saying things, you go, sure, sure. And I hear Sammy sometimes going, sure, sure. And I go, where you get that sure? You're from the South, boy. So it's probably not that you run into a rattlesnake every day in Chicago, is there?
There were no snakes ever in
Ever
Chicago.
in Chicago. Okay. So when you think about it, because down here, we had a jar one year. We collected the buttons, what we call the buttons, the rattlers off the snake, and it filled the jar. I mean, they're big. So an 8 means it's 8 years old, and that means it's big around. So it had to be big, and that means it carried a lot of venom. So when you think about that, and you think, what is the process if you got snake bit? I mean,
You're
I know
asking me. You're from Chicago. I guess you go to the hospital, right?
Well, you better. Yeah, you better, because if you get snake bit, it's going to go, the two fangs go in deep, and eventually, I mean, they've got anti-venom now and all of that, so chances of dying are not that great unless you have a weak heart. Then it is a big chance. But it would start to rot. Your skin, your flesh would start rotting away where it was if it wasn't treated. So, do you ever think sometimes in the midst of that, here's God is pointing out and saying, hey, this is bad stuff over here. This stuff, now you didn't go courting it. I mean, you didn't go saying, here's Sneaky. You went out there doing your job diligently, and there was the snake, okay?
Yes.
So do you ever think sometimes that God is warning us that things in our life can be deadly?
I think so. I really do.
And yet, how subtly it slips up on us.
Yes. In that moment when I was deciding what to do, a part of me was like, well, can I just turn off this hose and keep moving, because I had things to do. It took a second to register what the noise was and what it meant. And sometimes I wonder if I've ignored God when He's warned me before, because I didn't fully process what it meant.
Yeah, I think sometimes we don't know what the evil is. I mean, when you've lived around snakes like I have, you know that the distance of their strike is half the length of their body. So if you had a big snake like that, and say it was 4.5 feet long, you being as close as it could have slammed you well.
Yep.
And so what was God saying? You said God is saying, I'm here, Jill. This is evil. Look at it, Jill. It's not a pet snake. It's not a grass snake. We have a lot of bull snakes out here. When we find them, we don't kill them because we want to eat the rats.
Right.
But this was a deadly. And how to recognize that, If you weren't familiar with that little rattle, like you said, your comparison I thought was really amusing. Sounds like air going out of a hose. Never thought of that.
It was very subtle.
Mm-hmm.
Very subtle. And I've heard it louder before, but this warning was very subtle.
Mm-hmm. And it kind of, to me, I remember coming into our house one night. We'd been out late and just walking into the living room, and there was a rattlesnake in the middle of the floor. Now, people go, well, you probably live in a shanty, and that's why it crept in under the floorboards. Well, maybe it crept in the front door. I don't know where it came from, but it was right there in the middle. It was like this invasion of evil in my house, and it was terrifying. And I can remember too going to bed at night going, wonder how that snake got in here, wonder how it is. And so it makes you cautious, but then you don't want to go fearful, do you?
No. I just was way more alert. Like, I'd heard stories about people getting snake bit, and I knew that you could be, but I wasn't as alert as I could have been.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day I was really thinking about it, and I have ever since then.
Yeah. Sometimes the lessons the Lord gives us are really, He knows how to put it on our mind in such a way that it permanently is like a scar there, that we go, okay, I know about that, and I'm going to be looking next time.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, if we could translate that into knowing what is around us that is evil and beware. But I think I agree with you, Jill, totally. If we're open to God, we're going to hear that sound. Mm-hmm. We don't want to go around it, because to think, well, you know what, I could finish this watering, would have you in a bandage for a long time and aching for a long time because of that pain. Yes. So That's great. I think that's really good to pass on to people is be diligent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, watch for your adversary. See what he's doing. It's not mindless,
Mm-hmm.
but also don't live in fear of it.
Yes.
Right?
Well, and for the other part was, I had this deep, deep sense of gratitude that God spared me.
Yeah.
He didn't have to. I mean, he could have warned me by letting me get hurt, and I'd certainly be looking for rattlesnakes after that. But for some reason, he spared me, and like I didn't want to miss that and not be thankful.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So I think if we come away from that, we'll always be in a position where God ministers to us. I think if we take things for granted, God says, I can't help you. You're not hearing me. You're not praising me. And sometimes the best way to hear him is to praise him and to be thankful. Thanks, Jill. You sure did a good job.
Thanks, Mark.
Bye-bye.